All right, guys, this is Inappropriate Earl. It's a legendary day here in the Inappropriate Earl Podcast studios because this is the first time I'm doing a Zoom interview on my own. Usually I have someone helping me. I'm sure my guest loves hearing that. He's also the third Stanley Cup winner I've ever had on, the first being the great Theo Fleury twice, and the second being the wild man himself, Dustin Penner, who had his police dog running all over my apartment. And it's an honor to have him on. He's someone I grew up watching. Please, Inappropriate Earl fans, welcome the Golden Greek, not John Tolis, the wrestler, but Mr. Nick Kypreos.
Thanks, Earl. I appreciate it. I'm in good company. Those guys played the game hard, Theo and Dustin Penner, of course, with his Stanley Cup success in LA. So I'm glad to be on your show, and certainly glad to get to know you a little bit more and how well connected you are to our great game. I love it. I love hearing all about it.
Well, I'm a weird hockey fan because I actually grew up in Los Angeles, and but I grew up a Ranger fan because, as you can guess, the King games weren't exactly a high priority on television before Mr. Gretzky came here. So I grew up being fascinated watching Barry Beck play just because he was so much bigger than everyone. And I was like, who is this guy? And then the game was a lot, to me, funner to watch back then, just because it was more emotion, and that carried over into your era. And I don't necessarily mean the fighting, but I don't know, the games today remind me of a scrimmage game, most games.
It's gone very technical, our game, and on and off the ice. I think just the way that you program yourself to get ready, and sometimes the coaches, I think, get caught in a little bit more of the technical aspect, and we know where the analytics have gone, and all of a sudden we're hearing more about percentages of things that you didn't necessarily think of, other than having a gut feeling on. But it is what it is. I agree with you. I kind of feel fortunate, Earl, to have been playing in an era where we had a nice hybrid of old school and a little bit of new school, and that emotion was always there. That's the one part that we'll totally agree on right off the bat, that sometimes it looks like our players are so programmed that they're not even allowed to think for themselves. They're just like in a robotic kind of state where it's like, stand here, go there, go here, and then come off the ice. But there's also times when, in its true fashion, it's played magnificently with the speed of the game and the skill level. So it is what it is, but we still love it because it's our game.
Well, I feel old when I say this, when I tell you, and I am old, 52. But when I tell people, like, I used to look so forward to the Ranger Flyer games, when the Flyers had a football team on the ice, Glenn Cochran and Dave Brown and Ben Wilson and even 3 or 4 other guys you could fight. And then the Rangers would have like a nuclear arms race, and you have Beck and John Stone and Hospodar, and now I can maybe name, say, Ryan Reeves and Curtis McDermott and maybe Tom Wilson when he's not headhunting
or suspended.
I mean, what's your take on Tom Wilson? Just because, as a fan, I look at him and go, he's going to hurt someone one day. Like, when is the league? And I can't believe I'm saying this, growing up in the era that I liked watching hockey the most, your era, maybe slightly before yours. Are they waiting for him to really hurt somebody and then go, we have a problem?
Well, happy to answer that and talk about Tom Wilson. But I will tell you that when I signed my first professional contract with the Philadelphia Flyers, Cochran was in there, Ben Wilson wasn't there, but I did have the likes of Dave Brown, and Stanley, and Boxcar Hospodar as well. So there's just this real strong element of that team that you were talking about, or the mindset. And I remember playing in my first exhibition game, and the bus was going around picking up certain established players in their community. And no one felt good until Dave Brown came on the bus. Then we were happily going to go play the Pittsburgh Penguins in an exhibition game that you knew they were going to have like 8-10 fights in it. But I just remember the sigh of relief, or the all the players exhaling the moment Dave Brown got on the bus. It was like, now we're safe. Now we feel good about going to play a hockey game. And that's the way it was. And you speak of many characters, 15, 20 years ago, like a Dave Brown and a Daryl Stanley, but not so much anymore. But Tom Wilson does fall into that. He really does. And I'm sure today in 2021, when Tom Wilson gets on the bus to go play a hockey game, there's 19 other guys that breathe a little easier. And there is still room for a Tom Wilson in our game, and everybody wants him out. And are there consequences for the way he plays? Yes. But, if I'm the general manager or the owner of the Washington Capitals or teammates, where do I have in the pecking order that he may hurt someone else on the other team? I wouldn't hold it in a very high.
Right.
I mean, it's not my problem if he hurts somebody on the other team. All I know is I feel a little better. I feel a little safer. He's just not in that goon mode. He is a top six forward. He can play 18 minutes a night. He can play power play. He can play on your first line. He skates like he's 5'9". He hits like he's 6'5". There aren't that many guys out there. If I'm the Washington Capitals, could he hurt someone else on the other team? Yes. Is it my problem? No. Will I live with the repercussions of another suspension? Yes. But can he help me win a Stanley Cup? Another one? Yes. That's why I love Tom Wilson.
Now, if you're a teammate of Tom Wilson's, like I noticed, like I could see the frustrated look on the Rangers' faces when Ed Hospodar would, he comes to mind the most. He would play Tom Wilson like on defense, maybe jump a guy, elbow a guy. I know the one game where Clark Gillies broke his face, he had started by roughing up Mike Bossy. Do you kind of get a little unnerved that you might have to clean up some of his messes at times?
No. These guys clean up their own messes. And, there's two type of hockey players when you play with that edge. They're the ones that can start a fire, and they're the ones that can put fires out, and Tom Wilson goes out there and starts fires, but he can also put them out if he has to. So he's a double dimension kind of guy. The ones that you are talking about, I think, are the ones that start them, that can't put them out. And yeah, there could be some issues down the road between teammates or guys that, say that, I don't want to clean up your mess. But Tom Wilson isn't one of those guys. And, Ed Hospodar, who I still talk to today, through the alumni, and we share great stories of him really kind of taking me under my his wing a little bit. When I first started trying out for the Philadelphia Flyers, but he is not in the same place as a Tom Wilson. There are a few players, that could play the way Tom Wilson has played over the years. Lindros, to me, and Tom Wilson have a lot in common. Now, Tom Wilson will never have the finish and the finesse as Hall of Famer like Eric Lindros, but as far as size, speed, power, agility, Tom Wilson is closer to Eric Lindros than many want to admit.
Oh, for sure. No, I mean, it's funny. I was looking at some of your pugilistic endeavors last night on YouTube, and for some reason, the Tampa Bay Lightning Flyers playoff series from 95, 96 came up, where it was basically Eric Lindros against Michel Petit and Igor Ulanov, and just made me really miss that era of like each team had 3 or 4 Tom Wilsons.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we're going to get into you now.
I think, well, first of all, I think as much as some teams would not publicly admit, they would love a couple of Tom Wilsons on their team. And they're just, I think they're harder to find. Now, if I was out there and I could skate and move like a Tom Wilson at that size, I think I'd be writing my own ticket to make $5 million a year. There's just not many out there.
I mean, I could really only think of Ryan Reeves, who might not score as much as Mr. Wilson, and Kachuk in Calgary, a little smaller version.
But they're all both those guys are still missing, something. And Matthew Kachuk's a very skilled player, but he just does not have that physical presence, and he is just nowhere near as heavy as a guy like Tom Wilson is. But you better keep your head on a swivel when Matthew Kachuk's on the ice, because he will catch you, much like Tom Wilson.
I mean, as a player, when you're playing against those type of guys,
yeah,
do you know, like, if you're in the corners and there's a line change for the other team, do you sense like, he's out there?
100%. 100%. And it will factor into what you do the rest of your shift. And, on one hand, you want to focus on the game and managing the puck and sticking to a system. But there's also that corner of your mind saying, this guy could end my career if I'm not ready or if I'm not prepared, and I leave myself in a vulnerable position. This guy will bury me. And when you start getting guys thinking like that, you've done a pretty good job.
Right. I mean, in your era, I mean, just on like, say, the Capitals, you had, obviously Scott Stevens, who was maybe the last true great fierce checker.
Vicious.
I mean, he, obviously the Korea hit stands out, and, he had a few against Lindros, and he wasn't a giant guy, like, in terms of height.
He's 5'10" and a half, maybe 5'11". I mean, maybe some people would call him 6, but that's it. That was it. I mean, he was sheer brute strength and determination. That guy, whether it was an off day or a day of a game, would do 250 push-ups just for fun. He was a specimen. And, along with just, this sheer brute strength came this attitude that, he there were sometimes I'd look over the bench and I'd see Scott Stevens and his eyes would be rolling back like slot machines in Vegas. And I'm just like, look out, other team. But he backed it up. He fought some of the big boys as well. I fought him when he went to St. Louis, when he decided to bail on Washington and sign as a restricted free agent with St. Louis. First time we went in there, I ended up fighting him just to prove a point to my coach that we weren't going to cut any deals with Scott Stevens that night.
I mean, do you like? I know there's the famous soundbite of George Laraque and I think Rytis Ivanon's kind of doing a gentleman's, hey, do you want to fight? Okay. And I think George Laraque actually wished him good luck, which he probably needed. Was there a unspoken thing between you and Scott?
It was unspoken. Yeah, absolutely not. I don't think I've never, ever had anything in terms of, any premeditated or predetermined, scenario to fight a guy. It was, I have told guys we're going tonight. I mean, I've told people in warm-up, I got a problem with you, and I've got a problem the way you play, and I got a problem stemming from last game, and I'm coming after you. But nothing like good luck. That's when people really started to question everything. Unfortunately, when George was mic'd, he probably did the whole scenario a lot more harm than and probably he ever thought of. George was probably just trying to be a gentleman about the thing, but I think it went sideways the moment somebody heard something like that.
Right now, I kind of wish they heard the soundbite between Tim Hunter and Dave Brown, and I won't use the exact language they were using, but I think Mr. Hunter was calling Dave Brown a word that starts with a P because he had
Yeah.
the Titan jersey, and Dave was telling him, well, he could tie his jersey around his big blanket nose, and it was like the first.
Yeah, there was always the art of the conversation just prior to any fight. And unfortunately, I would have loved to seen that stuff stay behind the scenes.
Right.
Sometimes letting people's imagination is a lot better than the reality of it. But we're in an era now where people expect all access everywhere. So we've gone too far with it, in my opinion, but it's not like we're ever going to go back to the old way. So it is what it is.
Well, first off,
Mike's in the penalty box, Mike's and cameras in the dressing room. It's like, I don't know where we end it all.
I mean, I do like a good John Tortorella press conference, but
that's a show in itself.
Very few things make me laugh as a stand-up comic. I've done it for so long, I don't even know when I've started. But I just really love his. I can't imagine he's bitter, but he just comes off so anti. So I don't know, like he has a social anxiety disorder.
Well, it's the older he gets, the less patience he has for anything right now around the game, whether it is his players, whether it's the media, the questions that they ask. He's one of those guys where it's like it's right up to here, It's like there's no more room for him. But he wants to hang in there. He still wants to be a difference in Columbus. I don't know where that line is when he's gone too far. We keep seeing it and we go, okay, that's the new line. He's crossed it, or there's no going back. He's lost his players. Patrick Laine's come in, supposed to be one of his superstars. Now he's treated him like crap. Patrick wants to probably not play here anymore. I mean, every time you think that it's time to move on from Tortorella, he hangs in there, he wins, or he gets a vote of confidence from his general manager. But he is one of those guys where deep down, that there's more that he probably now dislikes about the game than the part that he loves about the game. And I don't know exactly where that line is, but he's on it, or he's awfully close to being on the wrong side of it. But we'll see how it plays out.
Well, I mean, as soon as they did the trade for Line A, I was like, this is going to last about 2 weeks. And then, not that Line A is a lazy player, but, he might not be the greatest defensive-minded player in the world. And I'm like, that's not going to fly with him. And I understand they had to trade Pierre just because, for whatever reason, him and Tortorella didn't get along. But it'll be interesting to see, with the trade deadline coming up. I can't imagine they'll trade Line A already, but I've even heard rumblings in LA that, who knows?
Well, you should have known the type of player that he is right off the bat, that he doesn't have a great reputation for, being a 200-foot player. And you should have really known that you're not going to fix him in 2 weeks or 4 weeks or 6 weeks or a shortened pandemic season. That if you're going to get him to the promised land when one day that you hope to compete for a Stanley Cup, you you got to consider him a work in progress. But the moment, you don't see what you like, and he's shown it on many occasions in a Winnipeg Jet uniform, I totally disagree with embarrassing him so close coming off a trade of that magnitude. I just don't think it sends a good message to your organization, and most importantly, your fans who want to buy tickets to see this guy, when you're telling us on some nights he's just no good.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a Kings fan, but I watch as much hockey as I can, and you could see this guy's already deflated after like 2.5 weeks. He's like, I think he said
Yeah,
himself.
I don't know. He's got he's got a good understanding of who he is or how good he is. This guy, I don't think will ever lack confidence, and I don't think Tortorella can strip him of that. So he's I think he's got a strong personality, and I think he's crystal clear on who he is, what he is, and what Tortorella thinks of him. So he knows whether he's in Winnipeg or Columbus that he's got a short window here before he becomes an unrestricted free agent, which is a couple of years. And then he can truly decide where he wants to go. But up until that, I think he'll roll with the punches. But I don't think Tortorella will destroy this guy in any way. He's too strong, I think, for that.
All right. Well, I could talk to you all day about other players, but I really wanted you on because I read your book. It's out now, Undrafted. It's at the usual spots, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, if you can find one that's not closed. And I
Online.
Yeah, I mean, I read it in 3 days.
Oh, thanks.
And I really, I thought selfishly, I'll just read the hockey stuff because I was a Ranger fan and I loved how you played on the Capitals and even the 2 years on the Whalers. I was a Whaler guy.
Yeah.
But I really found the whole book interesting because it wasn't really, it's not a hockey book. It's a book about life, with hockey maybe as the background.
Well, I try to bring a little bit of all of it. It really is a story of my life since, first discovering the game and, growing up immigrant family. Both my parents came over from Greece. So it wasn't about the game of hockey. It was about learning about the game and adapting to Canadian culture, which is so built around the game of hockey. And I think it's a story for some who are looking at hockey from the outside in and understanding that great things can still happen even if you don't have connections to the game or have an inside track. I was always a kid kind of on the outside looking in, much like my father probably felt from the moment that he came over from Greece to Canada at a young age. But you find a way, and what you don't know, you ask or you learn. And I think that probably sends the tone. It sets the tone up pretty good for my story and my book. And again, being a kid on the outside looking in and ending up playing over 400 hockey games in the NHL, winning a Stanley Cup, ending up a broadcaster, and then ultimately covering the Olympics and Hockey Night in Canada. That's and no one would like their odds of that happening if you knew me at 7 or 8 years of age. But I think it should hopefully inspire people to say, not why me, but why not me?
Well, just to go undrafted is like, I mean, being a Kings fan, I was familiar with Dave Taylor I think he was drafted in like, this is when the NHL had like 18 rounds.
Yeah.
Fifth to last. I mean, I was like, well,
Yeah.
that's a wacky story.
Late pick.
To go undrafted, that has to be a spur in the ass, pardon my language, to go, at the time, what was it, maybe 28 teams didn't want me. Well, I'm going to show them. And
yeah,
I had no idea that you had gone to, I think, 5 Philadelphia Flyer camps.
Yeah.
And like that at any point did discouragement kick in? Like, wow, this is my 4th camp.
Not really, to be honest with you. I really felt like it was building towards something. And the good news was when I went back and played junior hockey on a number of occasions, my seasons did get stronger. They got better. I got more comfortable with my game in terms of knowing where my strengths and weaknesses were. And, the perception was that you could still make the NHL at age 22, 23, 24. Now we got many guys in the last probably 3 or 5 years, Earl, who are debuting in the NHL at age 25, 26, 27, 28. Of course, maybe salary cap implications have something to do with that. But at the end of the day, it's nobody cares if they honestly believe that you can come in and do a good job. So I felt pretty good at 22, 23 to know that if it wasn't going to happen in Philadelphia, hopefully it would happen somewhere else. And I was fortunate enough that when the Flyers were pressed for their protected list at the beginning of the 89 season, that Washington claimed me off of waivers. But I was really confident at some point, if I wasn't going to be a Philadelphia Flyer, I was going to find another team to believe in me. So it was an interesting process of those 5 years that you spoke of. And I learned a lot in that Philadelphia dressing room, including hanging out with a guy like Ed Hospodar, who again made the most out of his talent level and found a way to contribute and be a great teammate. I also hung around and I talked a lot about training with Tim Kerr and how much we had in common. And the great Tim Kerr was also undrafted. So that gave me extra inspiration. So hanging around those guys, Hall of Famers like Mark Howe, was just a dream come true in itself, outside of ever playing one game in the NHL.
Well, I think a lot of people don't know this about you is you had like 41 goals, 62 and 49, 3 straight years in juniors. And
I could always put the puck in the net. That wasn't an issue. It was just a matter of finding the right scenario where I could do that. And even my first early years in the American Hockey League, where Bob Clark and the Flyers assigned me, the year we won the Calder Cup in '88, I had 24 goals, and I think I led the team in 7-game winners. And I knew I'm not, probably my skating wasn't strong enough to score 40 or 50 goals in the NHL, but I thought I could be a legit 15, 20 goal scorer in the National Hockey League. And I did get my one opportunity in Hartford that year where I should have had a 20 goal season, but I pulled my abdominal muscles towards the latter part of the season and didn't get a chance. But I was really close. I was close to being only a handful of players in the history of the game to score 20 goals and have over 300 penalty minutes, which included my old coach Paul Holmgren. But I always enjoyed that part of the game, scoring goals. I just never hit the level I did in major junior A hockey with the amount of goals. But it was all part of a good story, I think.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think a lot of people don't know the difference between junior hockey and NHL hockey. Like this memory always sticks in my mind of watching a game between Ottawa and Detroit, and Alexander Daig, who was the number 1 overall, I believe. He kept trying the same move on Steve Chason. 3 straight times down the ice. It was the old, dipsy doodle move between the legs.
Yeah.
And you could tell Steve Chason, who was probably a lot slower than Daig, he had seen that move 1,000 times, and he was just laughing at him, going, "This ain't Hull. This is Detroit. That's not going to work here." At what point do you realize the difference in skill from North Bay to even the Flyers training camp?
Well, My first training camp was just a huge eye opener, and I was somewhat shocked when Bob Clark offered me a contract after my first one because I just felt like I was a kid out there who was going to drop his autograph book out of his hockey pants when I was on the ice. I was just way over my head, but I tried to play a physical brand, which I knew I could. And there's a part of me that always kind of liked playing physical, even all those years I was scoring, 60 goals and 50 goals in North Bay. There's a part of me that always loved to finish a check or drop my gloves when I felt it was I really needed to. So I always try to bring that aspect, even in my first training camp in Philadelphia, and it was enough to sign a contract. But we're talking light years between major junior A hockey and the NHL. That's why you have these stop gaps, whether it is in my day, the East Coast League or International Hockey League, or of course, still going strong as ever as one of the best leagues in the world to play in. If you're not playing in the NHL, is the American Hockey League. There's only a handful of guys that make that leap now, Earl, from junior hockey to the pros. And I mean, the NHL, it's really, really hard. And you look at the numbers coming off of rosters in junior hockey and how many actually sign NHL contracts. It's not a high percentage. And then there's how many of them go on to have pro careers outside of the NHL. And there's, the numbers aren't that strong. And then there's the number of the percentages that guys play in major junior hockey and then go on to play in the NHL and have long careers. And it doesn't support it, right? 2, 3 off of every roster get to play in the NHL. That means there's 75, 80% of major junior hockey league players that don't even get a sniff. And I played with guys that were top scorers in junior hockey that never got a sniff, never got a chance, a look. So it is hard, but maybe you need 5 or 6 years to work on your craft. And I was fortunate enough, I had the American Hockey League to do that. And by the way, you also get to learn how to be a champion by winning a Calder Cup in '88. That played a huge part in my development to go on and play in the NHL. So patience is huge in our game when you're not a blue chip, can't miss prospect. Lafreniere, New York Rangers, right? Jack Hughes last year, New Jersey, first pick overalls. And there's an adjustment, and they've battled it. Like Lafreniere, I really would have had much. I really thought he'd have the success that a Tim Stutzel's having in Ottawa right now with the Rangers, and it hasn't been the case. Now, Jack Hughes has come a long way from last season, struggling, and he's still going to be a great player, but it takes some time, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. Not everybody's just this can't miss kid right from the get-go.
Well, I think we're seeing that in LA with the kid we drafted, number 2 overall,
Byfield.
Yeah, I mean, I think King fans are a little nervous because they see Stützle,
Yeah.
who played against men last year, which I think helped him. And Byfield's, he's not exactly lighting up the AHL and in the World Juniors. I thought he had a good tournament, not a great tournament. I think King, but it's like a huge difference. I mean, he was in Sudbury last year playing against kids with acne. Now he's in the AHL because the OHL is not playing right now. And
yeah, he should be back right now playing in the OHL. But like I said, sometimes it just takes a little longer, and there are good examples. Pierre-Luc Dubois did not get off to a great start as a top 5 pick in Columbus, and we know what a hot commodity he was, most recently traded to Winnipeg. The other one that comes to mind real quick, Earl, is Leon Dreissitel. There's another one that didn't get off to a great start, uh, and didn't make the team right off the get go. And a lot of people questioned his hockey IQ, and the biggest thing they questioned with Leon Dreissitel was his skating. They weren't sure if he was going to be this great skater in the NHL, and it just took about a good year for things to fall in place. And I'm sure that, that should be the case with Byfield. I know it's hard watching others succeed while you're still patiently waiting for your opportunity, your growth, but still plenty of times, plenty of room for that pick to work out well with the LA Kings.
Oh, sure. I mean, another King draft pick, Kaliev, Artur Kaliev. He's got like this booming shot, and in the one game he played in the NHL this year, he did score a goal, but he had another shot that you could tell he was saying to himself, "Why didn't that go in?" Because he's used to just blasting, and he's like, "Well, this is the NHL. Like, that's an easy save for that goalie." Is it a mental thing for these kids when they're that young to not get broken by something like that?
All of the above, and mental, physical, all of it. The key is to really make sure that a player of that magnitude, that's green and has so much raw talent, is kind of well insulated and has a great support group, and the expectations don't weigh in on anybody, that it starts to crumble them, because then you're just not doing your job. So it's having a good support group that's led by your leaders in the dressing room, i.e. now Doughty, Kopitar. Dustin Brown's been around forever, but these guys, this is in many ways who these players are kind of grew up watching carry the Stanley Cup, and what they say is like gospel. So they're in your hands, and you've got to treat it like what I say or what I do on and off the ice or in practice will have a huge influence on this guy moving forward, not only as an individual, but as a team together. So it's the whole complete package of the organization to, again, make sure that you treat your top asset with the respect that it deserves.
Now let's get more into you, because this podcast is about you, Kipper. At what point in your NHL career did you think, I might have to fight a little bit more? Like, was it said to you like, "Hey man, you got to drop him a little more," or did you figure it out yourself?
Well, I think for the most part, because I kind of enjoyed it, and I kind of, I felt like I grew up with the pro mentality of a Philadelphia Flyer, and I wanted to kind of inherit that Broad Street bully kind of mentality, that it's there if you need it. It really kind of shaped me into my first year with the Washington Capitals in 1989. And Brian Murray was, the late Brian Murray, God rest his soul, was the head coach of the Washington Capitals. And I went in one night and I fought Chris King in Madison Square Garden, and had a pretty good fight. Kinger probably gave it to me a little bit more than I would have liked, but Brian Murray really acknowledged that fight. And at the time, Brian had always felt like our team was too soft. We had Dino Cicerelli, Mike Ridley, we had Dale Hunter, we had Scott Stevens, but those were good players that most often Brian still wanted on the ice. So myself, Alan May, two young guys coming in for the first time, we wanted to take the bulk of that. And, I didn't even consider myself in Alan May's kind of weight class. Allen was always going to take on the toughest guys on the other team. We knew that, but I could be a good middle welterweight kind of guy for Allen and come in and support him as well. So, if Allen's up against 250 PM guys, I could take care of the 150 to 200 225 class. But I still wanted to get a chance to play and put the puck in the net. My first full season in the NHL, 79 games. I think I scored 9 goals that season. I had 18, 20 points. So I wanted to set myself up with a chance to be a regular 15, 20 goal scorer. Unfortunately, it didn't happen in Washington, but I think I kind of set myself up a little bit for Hartford. And then following Hartford, I quickly ended up being traded to the New York Rangers. And then, of course, here is this stacked team that would rival a salary cap today in the NHL, let alone the one that we had in 1994, where they just stacked so many good hockey players that played a lot more regularly on other teams. But we know that year it was all about slaying the dragon that was 54 years old in New York.
I mean, even as a King fan, I was like rooting for the Rangers just because the fans had just been waiting forever.
Yeah.
And you talked in the book about what a great leader Mark Messier was and how he kind of, even though you necessarily weren't playing a lot, he made you feel like you were, like he made you feel
Yeah.
and like
yeah
his
and that resonated with all of us. And the beauty of Mark is it just didn't stop on the 19th or 20th player on the roster, or the 23rd or the 24th, depending how many we carried, but it would go right through the dressing room to guys in the administration office, or behind a desk, or Tommy who washed our laundry, the PR department. It was like anybody that's in our inner circle that isn't feeling good, Mark will address it and figure out why and fix it, because that's the way he thought the game. That's the way his culture, his championship culture was like, you're only as strong as your weakest link. And if there is a weak link on or off the ice, I'll find it. I'll address it. And it'll make our team stronger.
Well, I think there's that one story when he was still in Edmonton, and Peter Klima, who was he's a guilty pleasure of me to watch. Just didn't play a lot of defense.
Yeah.
That he threw him up against the airplane door on the flight, mid-flight, and basically said, "You're going to play defense on this team." And then I think that might have been the year Klima scored the winning goal in that game.
The winner in Boston.
And
yeah, that was common for Mark. We had a few guys, every once in a while, like to go out, have some late nights. And I think, Esa Tikanen's feet, dangling, off the floor a couple occasions wasn't uncommon between him and Mark.
Well, I just remember watching.
And just, Tegan was right there along Mark every step of the way, winning those Stanley Cups. So Mark did him right ultimately.
I mean, what does it feel like to hoist the cup? I mean, that is something that I don't think non-hockey fans really appreciate, how tough it is to win. And like out here in LA, we had a player, Marcel Dion, who played, I don't know, close to 16, 17 years, never even came close to playing for the cup. I mean, is it just, can you describe that feeling of having your name on the Stanley Cup?
Well, it's Earl, it's everything it's cracked up to be for a hockey fan who grew up watching this trophy time and time be presented, winning your last hockey game of the season, the percentages of winning it, forget about the percentages of playing ever in the NHL, but just the percentages of winning it. It's just, you don't even, you don't even, it's a pipe dream, really, to be honest with you. So once you do lift it, there is a surreal feeling towards it. Uh, and, just being out on the ice moments after, and, having Brian Leach look at me on the ice going, okay, what do we do now? And he's like, and then Brian says to me, well, let's go ask Mark. He's done it, 5 other times. So, um, it is, an incredible feeling that you start now thinking about, how the heck you even got here, who is responsible, your family, your friends, your coaches, your teachers. It all happens on a real quick, right in the next few minutes after you're lifting this thing, and ultimately you're right back to, I can't believe this is happening.
And when does that feeling not go away, but like last night when I was watching some of your fights, a preseason game popped up from the '95 season uh, between the Kings and Rangers, and I think Troy Crowder was fighting Langdon, and it was bench clearing brawl basically. And it's like, wow, that Stanley Cup. I guess the honeymoon's over. It's back to work on the next season already. Like,
Yeah, we had an extended one because of the shortened season, because of the lockout, the first lockout of 3. And I think it was a bit of a grind kind of getting back into it in January, and we got off to a horrific start that really painted us in a corner, but we did manage to make the playoffs the year that you're speaking of, and then knock out Quebec, who unfortunately they lost. That was the final season in Quebec, and they were ranked number 1, and that was supposed to be their going away present, was to win a Stanley Cup for the city, um, in Quebec, and it never happened. And oh my gosh, just remember leaving Quebec for the last time, and just feeling like they were gonna push our bus over. It was rocking. Our bus was rocking, and they were knocking. Uh, but it was one of those years where we thought maybe we could come back. Our team changed a lot, though. Unfortunately, we lost Zubov. Zubov, of course, as instrumental as Brian Leach and Mike Richter and Mark Messier that season. And we probably couldn't overcome a few things, but our team makeup was much different in '95 than '94. And Steve Larmer, a great player, had real back issues, forced him to retire, gave up $1.2 million on his contract because he didn't feel like he could play at 100%, where I know a lot of guys would have just mailed it in for that money. But Steve Larmer's got too much pride, man, and too much of a stand-up guy to take the money and run. But it was unfortunate that we didn't give ourselves a true chance to come back that following year, because those pieces you could win with, no question about it.
now maybe that the second greatest accomplishment in your career is getting to play for your hometown, the Maple Leafs. Although I'm sure you were sad to leave the Rangers. I mean, I know Ed Olczyk struggled a little bit when he played in Chicago because he was from there. What is the pressure?
No, I was fine with the pressure. I think anytime that you play in your hometown, I think I was just the 80th player to be born and raised in Toronto and play for the Leafs at the time. So again, you want to talk about not liking your odds. Uh, that one's a really tough one to hit if you're born in Toronto. But I think it's like anything else, you're picking the right team, or having the right team trade for you. is like picking a stock. You're not sure if it's on its way up or it's on its way down. And unfortunately, towards the latter part of the mid 90s, the Leafs had a couple of good runs at a conference final with the strength of Doug Gilmour, Felix Potvin, Anderchuk, and then to take another crack at it, 96, 97, it started to change a little bit. Some of the guys were already moved, and there just wasn't enough gas in the tank anymore. And unfortunately, the team started to kind of peter out after those conference finals appearances earlier in the decade. And I was a part of a team that needed some major changes. They needed to get rid of the old guards and bring in some new fresh faces. And, unfortunately, Wendell Clark coming back a second time, when I was on the Leafs was a nice move for the city, but it wasn't the one that got them back into contention. It just unfortunately just cost them some younger assets.
And like at that point of your career, you certainly weren't old, but in terms, did you feel you had to fight maybe a little more just because of the
Well,
young?
I had ended up in 97, of course. That September, I suffered a major concussion in an exhibition game. Took the season off. And then at that point, yeah, Earl, just weighing out the pros and cons at age 32 to still play a certain way, take the punches. The guys kept getting bigger and stronger. And just understanding that if I was going to do it and do it for $500,000 a year, I'd run the risk of probably suffering more damage. And I didn't want that. I was just about to get married that year. You start envisioning your life after hockey, how you want to be set up, how you want to feel, and I really took that in consideration. The other thing that factored into it was I had auditioned for a new station here in Canada called Sportsnet. At that time, there was only one major sports cable channel called TSN up here. Some people thought that Sportsnet would never hang around longer than 5 or 6 years because the country's too small to support two stations. We know what the case is now in 2021. But I had auditioned for an analyst job at that point, and they told me I got the job, and that's when I decided to retire, knowing that I could do television for maybe another 5, 7 years. Ended up being 21 with Sportsnet, so that factored in as well.
Well, because I don't think people realize. I always say fighting in hockey is it's like being a mob hitman. If you won't do it, they'll get someone else to do it because there's 6 guys in the minors at that era of the game. I think the Leafs had Ty Domi, Baumgartner, a couple other guys, even on the Rangers.
Oh yeah, they're
I mean,
not short. Not like you said, there were others willing to do it.
And I know that in your last fight with Vandenbush, which I'll be honest with you, when I saw you guys together in that interview, I cried. I don't know what. I'm not like trying to be funny. I like.
Yeah, no, it was emotional. It was. Yeah, no. Trust me, I know when you're funny, right? But
Yeah.
it was it was good for me in so many ways. And that's the other thing that I try to make crystal clear in the book, that sometimes whether it's you feel like it's unfinished business or loose ends, but that was tying a loose end up for me. It helped with some closure. It helped me understand, a little bit more on how sometimes things happen, why they happen, and the key in all of that is not holding any animosity. And I wanted to kind of make that clear especially after listening to Ryan and hearing things during that interview that I would never even thought of or contemplated or understood, and so many people for so long, asked me, you know, whether or not I felt I could have died that night, or, you know, what that would have done, if I was seriously hurt, what it would have done to my family. And no one ever said, gee, I wonder what it would have done to Ryan if I would have been, if I died, or, you know, was seriously or permanently hurt or damaged. And he made it abundantly clear on how it affected him. And up until that point, never even crossed my mind, what was going through a guy who won the fight, right? Who did what he was supposed to do, and you know did his job. But he said it was a bigger struggle than he ever would have thought. I thought it was an interesting twist to the whole big picture.
Well, just when I watched the interview, like you could tell in his demeanor and his body posture, and then that was a tough dude, man. You guys were both fighting the giants, and you could tell that like he was almost a little kid, and like he wanted to apologize. And I would look at you, and I'm certainly not trying to put words in your mouth, but I could tell you're maybe saying, "Hey, I was trying to do the same thing to you. Maybe not necessarily hurt him, but like I was trying to beat you up too." So it's just
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
I don't want your
yeah,
apology almost.
yeah.
Um,
No, and he had, the other thing that was clear after all those years as well was, you know, moving forward, through his skates or his shoes, and hiding at times how hurt he had been, and not letting the coach know, and then going back out there knowing he was concussed or that he had suffered some sort of brain trauma, and not leading on and downplaying it. And, you know, uh, we're not the first to speak of this, but, I think if there is anything that's been a plus in the evolution of our game, is that, guys don't have to do that anymore. They don't have to hide. They don't have to put themselves in a position. We know it still happens, right? Earl, we're not dumb. We know guys still hide or downplay, but not nearly at the same rate that what we went through. And it's okay to take a week off, take 2 weeks off. I know we're not all Sidney Crosbys, but when you can feel like you can miss a a series, playoff season, playoff game, then, you know, the next guy will be a little bit more comfortable saying, I can't go tonight. I can't play. I'm not feeling 100%.
well, I think, and I know we only have a few more minutes, and I just want to say thank you for doing this. I'm
Oh, no problem.
I'm sure it wasn't on your bucket list of interview.
Are you kidding? I'm on Inappropriate Earl's podcast, man.
I should
I'm
probably just end
good.
it there. But, no, because I mean, usually I like to crescendo towards a funny story, or when I was the co-host of Roddy Piper's podcast, I would just give him a name and say, give me a few thoughts on the Ultimate Warrior or whatever. But it's
Yeah.
kind of heading toward something I want to talk about. Like you played probably in the last era where fighting was a strategical tool, and a win or loss could make or break someone's career. Like your junior teammate Troy Crowder, he went on that almost legendary half a season run where he was, he beat Probert, another teammate of yours in Hershey, Jeff Chikrin. And then, as soon as he lost to Darren Kimball, like his stock dropped like, a tech stock. And
Yeah.
so the winning or losing of a fight could keep you in the league or get you out of the league. Was that kind of mental pressure um, hard to overcome? Like the fact that, if I lose to this guy, I might be in Hershey or wherever tomorrow.
Yeah, I think I didn't stress over it too much because you know I never I only fought to buy myself time or to make sure that I found a way to kind of get noticed uh, and feel like I was part of a solution to a coaching staff or a general manager than being a bit of a problem. Now the problem may lie into a guy that goes and fights and continues to lose, but I didn't weigh it out that way, like probably more prominent heavyweights would, right? So because I never really put myself in that type of weight class, I always felt like I was a player that was just buying time to maybe play more regularly or score more goals. Now, I mean, ultimately, probably didn't solidify myself as much as I would have liked, but I was able to, not necessarily feel like I needed to win every fight, but just as long as you showed up and you got you got your nose a little dirty, it was enough. I didn't have to, for the most part of my career, I didn't have to feel like I needed a major knockout, but I did during that exhibition game against Ryan Vandenbush, which I talked about in the book. But that was because I was at a different place in my career that I've never been before. But I always fought to for 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 the pat on the back to say that I showed up and we didn't back down from it, but not necessarily feel like I needed to be this great technical strong fighter who just beat the shit out of somebody else. But others felt that way for sure, and I just used fighting as a mechanism to show emotion, to show that we wouldn't back down, and to make people feel like, yeah, it might be a long night if I got to deal with this guy's energy every night, telling me, he's going to go run somebody if I don't knock it off or something like that, which happened a lot. It'd be like, some nights you just say, you'd look across, the ice and go, what kind of night you want tonight? You want an easier one or you want a tough one? And if somebody's played 3 games in 4 nights, maybe they don't want to deal with my shit. So they won't go run Dino Cicerelli. They won't go run another player and stir it up. And that happened quite often in my era.
Yeah, no, I mean, it was really seemed like each team had 3 or 4 tough guys on it, and I know like in Washington you had Sheehy and May, of
Yeah.
course, and Corvo was a pretty tough dude.
Yeah.
Even a guilty pleasure favorite of mine, Ed Kostelek, who he had a drive-by in the league.
Yeah.
And really, before we get into my serious issue about mental health, can you what kind of feeling reverberates through a bench, win or lose in a hockey fight? Like I was probably one of my favorite fights to watch was when Larry Melnick fought Dave Brown at center ice. And obviously on paper, Dave Brown should probably kill him just because, Larry wasn't a small
Yeah.
player, but, wasn't a giant. And Melnick beat him at center ice. And you could see the Ranger bench just seemed like they were a foot taller after that. And you could see the Flyer bench go, uh-oh, our guy just lost. How much of an effect does that have on a team when it
I
happens?
think I think it still does a lot. And we don't see fights anywhere near like we did before, but Lucic in one of Daryl Sutter's first games fights Josh Anderson. And I thought, Josh is a big, strong guy. I mean, he's not quite Tom Wilson, but he's He's the closest thing I think we have. So, for Josh Anderson and Lucic to go at it would resonate, like you just said, right through the bench. Lucic still can bring it, man. Say what you will about his contract being too fat. Some nights he looks like he skates with a piano on his back, but this guy can still bring it physically. The other fight that I watched was Adam Ernie and Barkley Goudreau fight the other night in Detroit, and Goudreau knocked him out. I mean, he put him down with a right hook, and again, if you're Tampa Bay now and you've just come off a Stanley Cup wing and everybody's, you know, biting at your knees to take you down, that's a heck of a statement, man. Going into the back half of this season is like, we're not resting on just one cup. You want to take us down, you better come at us better than that. I thought that was a moment for them as well moving forward. It's still out there. It just doesn't happen as often as me and you, Earl, would probably like. But that's why the NHL has been very reluctant to take fighting out of the game, because I think it's in a good place now where you don't have as many fights looking like they were arranged in a parking lot, but it's there if you need it. And it does kind of ripple not only through your bench and your organization, but right into the fan base, which is never a bad thing, because we know hockey fans are passionate, they're emotional, and there's nothing more emotional than two guys dropping their gloves fighting for, their teams.
But it's also like when I saw what first made me aware of you is when I saw you fight Chris Simon, who was a mountain of a man.
Yeah.
Really, I think he started the movement of like these giant players. I mean, Dave Brown was certainly there as well, and maybe back in my era with Clark Gillies, but like that's right around when he started coming into the league, where the players were getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And like when I saw you fight him, I'm like, this guy on Washington's crazy. Like Simon
He
looked
was vicious. And
like.
I talk a lot about it in my book, and how I just felt like, he was coming after me. It was bullying a playground kind of thing. And, I just had to try to figure a way to put an end to it, or at least show him that I've had enough of his lip. I've had enough of him chirping me, chirping our team, and I had to address it. And the guy's got about, a good 5 inches on me, and I probably gave up a good 40 pounds to him. And that was one of those where, did I win? No. Did I lose badly? No. Did I earn a lot of respect for myself and my teammates? Yes. That ultimately was supposed to be the way fights turn out, except my last one, but that one was a good one.
Yeah, but you won a lot too. I mean that fight with Simon reminded me of another one of my favorite players, George McPhee.
Oh my God, did George throw him jackhammers, eh?
I just was obsessed with him. I mean, I guess you'd classify him as a smaller player, but he would fight like at Hospodar. He beat at center ice in Philly, and Dave Brown he fought, and he was kind of beating him until Jay Caulfield jumped in. But that's another podcast.
Yeah.
But I know your time is coming to an end on the Inappropriate Earl podcast.
No, we got a few minutes. I know there's a couple things that you want to talk about.
Yeah.
Of course, mental health is continuing to be an issue, not only in hockey and sports, but society as general. But I know it's near and dear to your heart.
Well, it is, because this is where the one, I guess, intersection where I think comedy and hockey maybe collide. You wouldn't think there'd be many points where they would, but I've certainly since I've done comedy, I've probably lost 10 of my friends or coworkers to mental illness. And I know I told you, and I asked for your permission to bring it up. I was very affected by Mark Pavlich's passing. Just to me, he's a hockey legend just on his Miracle on Ice. Like, if he just did that, he'd be a legend to me. And then being a Ranger fan and watching him play a lot, and I guess he ended his career with the North Stars. And he passed due to mental health issues. And I know you corrected me, and just what made me sad even more than his passing from mental health issues, and I can almost bring in Bugard into the same situation, that didn't seem like that many people helped him. Like it seemed like maybe his ex-teammate who lives in China, Beck, really was the only one who took any kind of initiative. And what can the league do, I guess, is my overall question, to make sure there's not another Pavlich, a Bugard, a Rick Rippon, a Belak.
Yeah.
Because I'm just a fan, and
No, and it's all legit. And for the record, I don't want people to think that I corrected you, because I didn't. You're just talking a little bit prior to our show today. We did speak of Pavlich, and the question is, are we doing enough? Can we do enough? And I think what happened with the Mark Pavlich story more than anything is, what kind of brought a little bit more attention to it was the fact that the great Barry Beck, New York Ranger, had publicly come out and questioned particularly the New York Rangers. And I don't want to quote him, but I think he said he referred to the Rangers as cowards for not facing this. And not that I corrected you or anyone else, Earl, but the point that I wanted to make is, especially when it comes to Barry Beck, is that a lot of this stuff is done privately and internally for the very various reasons. But the biggest one is this is the way, families and people want it, in terms of, unless they come out publicly, it's very hard for the New York Rangers or ex-players or whoever's involved in the scenario, speak publicly of it. So there's a lot of lack of information in terms of what's out there, and that's because that's really the way it still needs to be. But I can assure you, when it came to Mark Pavlich, that and to Barry Beck, that the Rangers were heavily involved. They were. But what you hear or what you know of it remains confidential. And that includes with the NHL alumni. I've been a member since the moment I retired from the NHL alumni. Mark Napier did a terrific job and had to deal with a lot of things. And now it's Glenn Healy, who deals with a lot of players who suffer mental illness, and the NHL alumni's job is to make sure that they have a lot of support around them, whether it's emotional, spiritual, or financial, that they're in a position where they can get the help that they need or deserve. And the Rangers were right there for Mark Pavlich. But, and Barry Beck, calls out John Davidson, and, because I know that organization exceptionally well, and I know they would never turn their back on anybody, let alone a player like Mark Pavlich, who's meant a lot to the New York Ranger organization. But the problem here is, when we speak of some players that get in trouble, and Earl, now you're also talking about, the law and court issues and all of that. It gets very, very technical, very dicey. And, you're talking about judges here. You're talking about 25, 27 violent assaults. And then, you're talking about players that are classified maybe a dangerous offender. how you show support, sometimes it can be a slow process. And unfortunately, we just didn't get to Mark fast enough, and unfortunately, he's not here today. But honest to God, I can tell you that I'm proud. I'm a proud member of the NHL alumni. I'm proud when I hear stories of our association being there in ways that can help players, ex-players, know that there are options out there. There are programs out there. There's, you know, I've I've we've heard and listened to, Glenn Healy pulling our ex-players out from underneath the bridges and putting them in situations where they can get better and hope they can get better, but they've got to meet us a little bit too, right? You got to have someone that embraces the help and wants to take advantage of it to truly see some success. And we're getting there. Unfortunately, we couldn't get to Mark fast enough, or we couldn't reach him, until it was too late, unfortunately.
No, I mean, I know there was a player out here in LA. I think you played against him a little bit, Matt Johnson, who had a nice NHL career, and but as the role of a tough guy, and he was fighting the super heavyweights for a large portion of his career, and I'm sure he felt some guilt or whatever, remorse about what happened with him and Jeff Bukaboom. He ended up being homeless on the streets of Santa Monica, which, as a fan of his, it made me sad. And I also see it in the world of pro wrestling, where you see how a lot of those guys end up. And, in the UFC, I had Don Fry on my podcast in my house, and he was probably the first celebrity to, be silly enough to agree to come to my house to do this show. And I got sad when he left, because he's not that much older than us, and I had to help him get up off the couch, and I'll assume there's some form of CTE, with NHL players, UFC, wrestling. So I'm just trying to do my small part to raise awareness, I guess.
Yeah, no, and it's something that we can't let our foot off the pedal here, with mental wellness and support groups, and knowing that there are options out there. And if you see signs where you're not yourself, or you don't feel right, it's okay to ask for help, and it's okay to feel not right, and it's okay to reach out. And I think any form of sport, or work, or personal, professional, it doesn't matter, whatever we're in. I think the underlining message is better than it's ever been before, that it's okay. It's okay to not feel right, and it's okay to reach out for help. And I
Yeah,
think if we keep sending that message, we'll get on that other side of where we need to be.
well, I think you make a great point for, people like me. And I didn't mean you corrected me like in an aggressive way. I just, as a fan, I don't have the inside sources you have.
Yeah, I
And,
know. I thank you.
and it's like with the Bugard situation, I think fans were just given the dialogue that, he was just left to wander the streets of New York on his own, and no one helped him. And I'm sure that the Rangers and the league maybe tried with him, and didn't quite work out. But
Yeah, there's so many stories where we have pulled players out. We've put them in uh, homes. We've put them in programs. They leave on their own, and they go right back out on the street. And it's really hard, and it's frustrating too, as well, for so many that put in such a big effort, and they're not quite ready, or won't meet you a little bit to get the help. But you keep trying, Earl. You keep trying, because that's what we're supposed to do, not give up. That's the hockey player mentality.
well, I think it's also important, like, with players that played in your era, maybe even the era before. Like, if you watch, like the smaller players, like Eddie Johnstone, George McPhee, Nevin Marquardt, these guys were fighting you as well, fighting Chris Simon, fighting a Darren Kimball, a Robert Dirk, who I know was your first inning. I mean, Robert Dirk was a giant, and so
Giant.
but you beat his ass.
Oh gosh, no business fighting guys that big, but I'm glad I'm here to tell you about it. That's for sure.
So am I, and I feel guilty for taking the. I know I limited you to an hour, and we've gone over.
Well, listen, it flew by, right?
What
It's
did
easy.
I could talk to you, about, for another hour about, because maybe we can end on this. Like I sped through the hockey part of your book just because I was so interested in it. You named, names. You mentioned Jeff Chikrin. I'm like, oh my god, I remember him, and Troy Crowder, who is a legend to me. But I found the most
How about
interesting.
that?
No, I mean he
That
was.
hype.
Yeah, I
I
mean,
love the hype. I love the hype around Crowder, Probert, Domi, Probert. Oh man, that just,
what
I don't know. I don't want to sound like a Neanderthal or anything like that, but man, the hype around those two, those names was television, great television in itself.
Well, I remember, and well, maybe this will lighten up the mood a little bit. I remember walking around the Forum opening night. I do forget who the Kings were playing, but everyone in that building, and that was the night the Crowder beat Probert. Everyone was talking about it. Like, it's like everyone was whispering, "Hey, did you hear what happened to Probert in
Yeah.
Jersey tonight?" And then I think a couple nights later, he with one punch broke Jeff Chikrin's nose, and I don't think I've ever heard a crowd in Philly. It was like a balloon deflating. It was because Crowder was kind of an unknown to a degree to most hockey fans, and then he beat up Tony
Yeah.
Horchak, and I think he beat him up twice, and Berube.
Well,
It was just like,
just it's like a ripple effect. The energy that those guys could bring to a hockey game and how it kind of just ripples right through a building, right through the hockey world. It was fun back in those days.
well, it was. I mean, I remember Vancouver bringing up Southern California's own Craig Cox, and just to go, hey, you
God,
got
that
to
guy was
fight
tough too.
Crowder. You got to fight him. Like someone's got to
Yeah.
beat this guy. And then I don't think Crowder or Cox ever played another game in the NHL after what happened. So it was just such a does word spread, like when that Probert Crowder fight happened? Does your locker room hear about that?
Oh my gosh, everybody. It was must watch TV. It was. You knew it was coming. You knew Domi, Probert, all of it. It was just like how can I God, I hope we're not playing that night. It's like it was pay-per-view stuff, man. It was. I love the fact that you're such a wrestling guy too, because even my days in North Bay, Saturday nights with the wrestling, all of it, we had a huge wrestling team. Our captain, Wade McPhee, loved every every character, every wrestler. I was a Roddy Piper guy too. He
It
was my
was
guy.
when he
And
would.
he wasn't a big guy, right? Not a big
No,
guy like the big boys.
I mean, he was probably, when I stood next to him, I was taller. I guess he was 6 feet, maybe. I guess, toward the end of his life, he was still probably 220 and pretty ripped.
Oh, you could tell he was a thick guy for sure.
Yeah.
But just it was the personality that made him look like he was about 7 feet tall.
Oh, he
He
would
was so good.
come to the Comedy Store late at night, and he was so humble, and I think he was almost embarrassed to ask for stage time because he knew we'd all like struggled forever to get in at the Comedy Store, which is like, for me, that's like playing for the Maple Leafs or Rangers for you. And he would just tell these
Yeah.
stories, and it was like seeing Superman come into the driveway. Like he'd get it, he had this little Mercedes, and he'd get out, and just like it was like
That's so cool.
I'm still affected by getting to do a podcast with him, and because like back then in the 80s, with the internet not being really what it is today, I really thought Kamala was from Uganda. So I even have my Kamala doll. He's my good luck charm there. But now you can look up Nick Kypreos and you
I
get the
know.
whole bio. Or you could look up Kamala and go, oh, he's not from Uganda, he's from Mississippi. So
Yeah.
a little bit of magic has been taken away. But
Yeah. No, I enjoyed that part of my life as a teenager, following Macho Man and Elizabeth and all those characters, man. It was good TV. And again, whether you were a believer like my grandmother that it's real or not, they just knew great television. They in many ways they were all heavyweights on their hockey team, sending the message out, for all the right reasons. And as soon as they grab that emotional tie that you have, then you're in big time. That was the beauty of wrestling back then, that they could draw that emotion out of you like a heavyweight could for us in the mid 80s or the 90s.
oh, I mean, getting back to hockey, I mean, I could talk wrestling. We might be here another 2 hours.
We'll do it another show.
Yeah, you're like, all right, Earl, it's time to end it. But it was like I bring back, hockey, the emotion to see like Washington and the Rangers play against each other, and Philly and the Rangers, and the Kings in Edmonton, or obviously Calgary and Edmonton. I mean, those were like games played in an octagon. Like, is there anything the league can do where I mean, I'm not saying I want to bring back bench clearing brawls, but like to put just a little more emotion into the game?
I think ultimately it really comes down to the players. There's the owners and the league run, pretty much the rules, but they haven't tweaked the rules enough where it's changed so much that, it's pretty, put it this way, it's there if you need it. So it's really up to the players to decide how emotional they want to get and how far they want to push it. And I just like the fact that it's still there if you need it.
Sure.
Right. It's just, if you don't want it, you don't have to feel like you need to do it. But it's there in case you need it. I'd rather see you guys drop your gloves and fight than start stick swinging, right?
Sure.
As an outlet. So that's up to the players to decide what they want to do with it. Ultimately, they're the ones playing it. They're the ones that decide.
And just one last note before we wrap up. The part I enjoyed the most about your book was, I thought I'd speed through the hockey stuff and then go, the rest isn't really of interest to me. How much drama can there be in the TV side of the business? And I really think people should read the whole book, but the TV stuff was almost more fascinating to me. Just the behind the scenes, was almost a different kind of mental pressure, getting scoops.
Yeah.
And I say this like with the trade deadline coming up, I'm sure you're working the phones and, who's selling, who's buying. And I know there's, you and Bob McKenzie and Dan Drager and the great Doug McLean, like there's like probably 10 of you who are fighting for the scoops. How do you go about out scooping the scoopers?
Well, I'm not sure where it's probably not in that same place anymore, which I kind of don't like to hear, because competition's good for everybody. It's not only good for sport, you're a competitive guy, I'm sure, at the Comedy Store, and who's on first, who's on last, who headlines, who has more time than somebody else. You're competitive. It com- Competition is so healthy for business, right?
Right.
So I think we've lost a little bit of that lately up here between Sportsnet and TSN. I hope it kind of evolves back to that. We'll see now the NHL signed this massive deal with ESPN. They come back into the picture, which I think is great because NBC isn't an all sports station like TSN or Sportsnet, but ESPN is. So they have a chance now to kind of lead the next little while with some information or some inside information that could feed, I think, a much bigger audience in the United States ever before. So I hope ESPN starts having more shows around hockey outside of a 2-minute clip at 10 or 11 p.m. But saying that, it was fun. It was fun being a part of that because I am a competitive guy all the way around, and getting inside information or talking about stuff that other people don't know is kind of fun. It's kind of cool. So I hope it comes back full circle, but it was a fun time for me to be in that industry and raise the bar with that competitiveness that you're talking about, because we did take it to another level with TSN, and it was fun being part of it.
Well, it was just like, it was almost like a repeat of your hockey career where you wouldn't, I don't want to say all, I think most players after their careers were over, they're not built for TV. Like, no, I mean, I look at as an entertaining commodity. There's more than just saying, well, the LA Kings are looking at Patrick Laine. You have to say it in an entertaining way. Like, you did it. I like how Stu Grimson is on the NHL Network. He kind of is like you. It's entertaining, but knowledge. I won't mention the certain people. It's a little boring on TV, but I appreciate. I think people have to be entertained, especially with hockey. Like, since it's not yet a gigantic sport in the U.S., I think it's important to have some form of entertainment.
Oh, for sure.
To go with the knowledge.
Yeah, yeah. And we try to do that, like, just doing the show called Real Kipper at Noon on linemovement.com. It's on YouTube. So please subscribe when you get a chance. But that's one of the things that Doug McLean and I, who do this show, 3 times a week, want to do, is just bring whatever conversation we're going to have anyways to the forefront. And I know deep down, hardcore hockey fans, they still love to hear what we're hearing. And Doug McLean's favorite line on our show is, I'm not telling you if it's true or not. I'm just telling you what I hear.
Right.
That may be enough. Like, you've been around the game for 35, 40 years. A lot of people still in high places. If you can share what you're hearing, that'll entertain me for the next hour. So I hope ESPN does that. I really do, because it is not just about showing the games, but it's about being emotionally attached to the game. And that means 24/7, right around the clock, that you want to hear, breathe, and live the game of hockey. That's the way we've been up here in Canada, Earl. And there's still plenty of time to make a lot of believers in the south of the border that you can be that way with your favorite team as well.
Well, Nick, I can't thank you enough for this. Everyone, please read his book, Undrafted.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate it. We didn't even have time to tell you about my new cocktail.
Please do. Please.
Oh, okay.
No rush.
So, all right. So, within the last year and a half, 2 years, when I kind of took a step back from broadcasting, I'm watching Ryan Reynolds be really cool with his gin, and I'm like, we gotta do something like that. So we were around a dinner table with family friends, and we started talking about these RTDs. Do you know what an RTD is, Earl?
I don't. But please tell me.
RTD stands for ready to drink. And that's what these things are, ready to drink out of a can. So these things have kind of really slowed down the sale of beer and wine, I think, in the last little while, because there's these cocktails that are ready to drink in a can, and White Claw was probably the biggest one that we've seen in the history of beverages. And now they've exploded, especially up here in Canada. So we made an RTD out with some family friends. It's called Little Buddha Cocktail. And this particular one is a premium vodka that's mixed with grilled pineapple and rosemary. So it's all organic. And the key in all of this, Earl, is people want, to still be healthy now more than ever. So they want to drink these and still have under 100 calories. Want to be gluten-free, no sugar, but taste great. That's what we've done. So it's been about a year and a half, and now we've had so much success. We're going to come out with a second flavor called peach tea, but we're not in the States yet, but we are working on that. So it's called Little Buddha Cocktail. Please follow it on Twitter, Instagram. And when I get a chance, Earl, I'm sending you a case.
Well, I've never had a drink in my life, so
Are you okay? So you're no alcohol.
Well, I'm not like against it. My mom, this is like, when we should end the podcast when I'm talking about my mom, but she bribed me as a child. If I didn't drink or do drugs till I was 18, she would get me the car of my choice. And she did. And I never was tempted, even though I'm in comedy and I see more drugs than probably Keith Richards. But I will give what you send me to my friends who are comics, and trust me,
beautiful.
It will be gone.
Beautiful. Well, you know what? Hats off to you, man, because that's tough being in your industry and having all that around you. But I think it shows to the strength of you and your comfort level. And I think it's awesome. I think it's awesome. Good for you.
I mean, I was raised by very strange but effective parents. So I miss them a lot. So enjoy yours. I know yours are both still alive.
Yes.
So, I can't thank you enough for doing this.
Oh, listen, my pleasure. We'll do it again. I know I love hearing that you're a hockey fan, especially, you in the comedy industry. Very competitive business. You guys all do a great job out there, and love to come back on your show and talk more hockey.
Well, I would love to. You have an open invite. I mean, I'm a gigantic hockey fan, and I don't get starstruck at all. Like when I met Jim Carrey, at the Comedy Store, he's like, "Oh, you're very funny," and it didn't really faze me. But when I met Troy Crowder on the no, I'm serious.
He's awesome.
When I met him on Venice Beach, I just walked up to him and I said, "Hey, man, thank you for all your fights, and thank you just for everything." And he looked scared.
He's so humble.
Yeah.
He is a gentle giant, that guy. He's one of the nicest people you'll ever meet. So not surprised to hear his reaction after you told him that.
And when I met Paul Bissonnette in the Comedy Store, he was, I won't say what he told me, but he was very interesting as well. He had a hot girl with him, and in the middle of my act,
of course,
like, "Hey, you're really funny, Earl, but I gotta with this girl, so can you get to your closer?" So probably
that sounds like.
But follow.
That sounds like Biz Nasty.
Oh, he was great. That's what I love about 99.9% of the hockey players I've ever interviewed, spoken with, met in person. They've all been great. Maybe one was a bit of a weenie, but I won't mention his name. You may have fought him. I'll just say that. But Nick, thank you so much. Listen to Nick's show, Line Movement. It's on YouTube. Subscribe to it on Twitter. And Real Kipper on Twitter and Instagram. Is that your Instagram?
Yeah, at Nick Kypreos, Instagram. I think Real Kipper was taken. Can you imagine the nerve of that guy?
It's probably the guy I didn't like that you fought. So he might be moonlighting as you. But this has been Inappropriate Earl. Apple Podcasts and SoundCloud. Nick will come back for more. And thank you so much, Nick.
Thank you, Earl.